Hi, everyone, and welcome to our segment, Right Out of the Gate. I'm Jessica Krauser, and I'm here with Brian Baker.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm wonderful.
I feel like I haven't seen you in a while. And we have a special guest today.
We do.
Yeah, we do. Joel Sivillo is here with us today. Joel, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Joel is a doctor of physical therapy, and he has his own mobile practice. It's a physical therapy called Move and Improve PT, correct?
That is correct.
Awesome. So you were not at the gym class the day that Joel came in and spoke to class.
I missed his presentation.
It was a great presentation. So I'm really excited to have Joel talk about basically what you shared with us at the gym. So before we jump in, if you want to give a little bit of your background so this one knows that you're legit.
Yep.
Uh-oh. Well, I didn't bring a copy of my license, so I apologize. But I'm actually a little new to the game. I've been exclusively performing physical therapy in people's homes for 8 years. And I changed to become a physical therapist at age 40. So that was kind of my midlife crisis. I went back to school. It was something I had always had interest in. So,
well, tell them what you did before.
Oh, I was a meteorologist. I actually worked in the risk management industry, and it was, believe it or not, rather fun. I had a great group of people I worked with, but I just felt pulled in this direction. Mm-hmm. So in the last 8 years, I've been going to people's homes, which I think is really important because that's where they perform most of their mobility tasks, and it gives you a different perspective than maybe seeing them in a gym or in some sort of clinic. So that's basically what I've been up to for the last 8 years, and I do see a fair amount of people with Parkinson's disease.
I was going to say, so do you focus on like neurodegenerative diseases that people have, or is it all across the board?
Well, in terms of what I do, it can be really general. In my education, which was not that long ago, I did have some focus in that area. When I was at Ohio State, I had some great mentors and professors that were there, so I got to participate in some of the research that they were doing at that time.
Cool.
So.
Great.
One of the things that Brian and I talk about constantly is all of the definitions that we hear, and like half the words we can't say.
You can't say them, or you forget, like, get the definitions mixed up. You're like, is that bradykinesia or?
I'm like, yeah, and we just want to say, like, all I know is like this is stiff or this is rigid. But you had a really good example, and I'm sure you then heard it from school. It was the letters TRAP, so trap, right? So can you talk to us about what those are?
That's right. If you could just remember TRAP. Okay, so in order, we've got tremor, rigidity, akinesia, and postural instability. So tremor, I think everybody's familiar with. That's fairly easy to know if you're experiencing it. Rigidity would just be kind of stiffness or tightness in your limbs. So you may be tested if you are suspected of potentially having Parkinson's disease, or if you're a person with Parkinson's disease, during an assessment with your physician, they may take your joints through a range of motion and see what kind of rigidity there is.
Okay, so real quick, I actually asked my neurologist about this just a couple weeks ago, and I went there because they take your arm and they like do this and
wiggle it.
And I asked her, I'm like, okay, what are you doing? Like, what does that do? And I think that's what she said. That's how you check for rigidity, like the fluid of like the joints or however they move, right?
It could be, yes.
Okay.
And sometimes, that stiffness or tightness can be in the limbs in many places, but that might just be the preferred location where they might do that, just to get a quick and dirty examination of what rigidity looks like for any given person. Mm-hmm. So. And
then, sorry, you can go.
Oh, that's okay. So we had TRAP, tremor, rigidity, and then akinesia. So that's the tough word. A lot of times you'll hear bradykinesia. They can be used interchangeably. So brady means slow. Kinesia is movement, so slowness of movement. And then akinesia, that means absence of movement. So that's where we start to see
I have all of it.
Freezing.
All of the above.
So absence of movement is particularly difficult when you are trying to move, of course, and that's what can get us into some difficult situations with balance and feeling stuck.
And that's where they talk freezing of gait.
That's where I tend to categorize freezing of gait is with akinesia. And then the last one is postural instability. So sometimes there is the posture that feels as if it's being pulled forward and down. That can lead to falls as well. But the combination thereof between akinesia and postural instability is a real big fall risk. And the akinesia, I think, is a very difficult thing to deal with. First of all, if you're experiencing it, because it is very frustrating and sometimes dangerous, but it's also one of the more difficult things to treat as a physical therapist, because what works for one person might not work for the next.
So what do you do with your patients to help with that?
That is a great question. So I think it all starts from a good assessment, really talking to them and understanding where the frustrations are, when it's happening, and then if we see it in process, then we can start to talk about strategies, either to prepare ahead of time, which is super important. Prepare smoothness of movement, moving big, moving with fluidity, so that it's less likely to happen. But when it does happen, to have strategies in your back pocket that you can use at that instant. So that is what becomes difficult. I see it in folks that have freezing, that it becomes frustrating and they try harder and harder to move in the same way, and that doesn't always work. So it takes a mind shift and sometimes a body shift to move in a different direction and in a different way to free the person up so that they can continue.
Do you have that problem?
Not so much on like walking or anything like that, but like it's gotten worse when I'm exercising, like doing repetitive movements, jumping jacks, where I can do one or two and then I'll freeze up. Same thing with like burpees, but sometimes it's just me.
Like, is it like do you totally freeze or just you?
Yeah, like I don't. It's really weird. It's like you're telling your body to do it and it's just not moving, And so but then you, like I said, you take a breath, you count back a little bit or whatever, and you start all over again.
So this might be a dumb question, but freezing of gait, does gait just mean it's
walking?
Okay.
Walking.
But you can freeze in other areas, like you said, if you're doing burpees or something else, you might freeze.
Yeah,
is it like you're freezing your arms?
Yeah, jumping exercises, anything that's any kind of repetitive movement. It sounds like you do like 2 or 3, then you have to freeze up.
Like when we would brush our teeth and we'd like stop.
Yeah, same thing.
Okay, is that?
That
I know that's
also,
not freezing of gait, but that's just freezing.
But it's related. I think it's related to the bradykinesia and the akinesia, and some of the testing that people might encounter when they go see a physician or other clinician is they might be asked to do repetitive movements, and what they would be looking for is slowing down and smaller movements over time. That tends to be a significant symptom in a lot of people with Parkinson's disease. So it's related.
When I try and wave my hand, I wave, I go like this and it stops.
Yeah.
Like, so every time I'm like, I go, and then like this one keeps going and then this one stops. That's my party trick. So you talked about different strategies, and I know you referenced, is it American Parkinson's group? Sorry, I don't know all the names, but they have the 10 tips.
APDA. I believe that's the American Parkinson Disease Association. And, when I showed that slide, it was taken from their literature, and it had 10 good things to try. And I think it's important to work with all of them, because you never know in a certain circumstance which one is going to be right for you until you practice it. And then when a freezing episode happens, which incidentally doesn't happen to everybody, but when it does happen, you're prepared. You have tried this ahead of time, so it might make it a little less frustrating when you're undergoing the stress of a freezing episode.
So what are some of those tips that you can share?
Okay, so some of them are visual. This one, I've seen some people try this, but not too much. Have a laser pointer or something like that. Put a spot on the floor and step to it. But it might be
like
even...
a cat.
Exactly. If we could move that fast, it wouldn't be such a problem. But also, just picking out a visual cue on the floor. What kind of patterns exist on the floor that you could take a step toward a target? Because when you choose something that is external to what you are thinking about, sometimes that can free you up because of the nature of how Parkinson's disease affects people. So you can pick an external cue in the environment and work to move towards it. So that's something that is, frequently suggested and tried. For some people, that may not free them up. Sometimes you might have to, if you're maybe stuck at a doorway, you take a step backwards and then proceed forward, or step to the side. But I don't know. Have you, if you have had that happen?
I can see your kids with the lasers where Mom missed it, Mom you missed it.
Go here, go there.
Yeah. get the button, Mom, get the laser.
I see, like, especially at the gym, I see when somebody is freezing or in that frozen state. And I think you were saying earlier, people's knee-jerk reaction is to move faster, but in reality, they need to like stop, change, like reassess and change what they were going to do, right?
Yeah, and I do some of those like visual. I might pick out a spot on the wall and just focus on it while I'm doing jumping jacks or something like that. And it takes your mind off the freezing, and you're not freezing because you're not thinking about it a lot of times. You just focus on that thing. Counting, as much as Melissa yells at us to count, sometimes counting just takes your mind off it, so you're not thinking about it. So you're just focused on the counting versus the with the movement.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you could find something external to you to focus on, that can be really helpful, especially if it means you're going to move toward it. But what's even more powerful, if you can find things internally that you can do habitually in that situation, that's even better. Because if you're stuck and you are in a new place and you're looking around for a cue and you're frustrated and you can't find it, that might not be quite as effective for some people. So, having auditory cues for some people might be helpful if they are starting to notice that it's happening while they're moving and they're starting to slow down or get stuck. So
during your presentation, you talked a lot about music and how music can help. And there was an app or what's it called when you follow this 100 beats per minute, like the Mana something.
I think it might be called Get Song BPM or GetBPM.com.
But what's that idea? What's it called? It begins with an M. That like your
metronome.
Yes,
a metronome, of course. Yeah. So if you just having a metronome with clicking, that's giving you an auditory cue. And if you can think about your walking cadence and how you're going to move your feet when they're touching the floor to the beat of a metronome, that can be really helpful while you're in motion. It's something you might try also if you have a freezing episode. It might be hard to think, okay, now I need to get my phone and put a metronome on. But if you have an app right there, something you can turn on, it's worth a try. It's probably worth a try before it happens to see how well you can deal with something like that, Yeah.
Did you ever try that?
I've not.
Like I didn't know what it was, but it was fun. Like we were in the gym and we literally like walked around, but to certain songs, and like you hear the beat of the song and you try and walk to it. And then show that I have no rhythm even when it comes to walking. Yeah, that too.
Probably way better than you think.
Can't dance, and then we talked about you can sing along with it, but not many people want to sing out loud.
Yeah, well, that has actually the dual benefits. So the singing is great because you're going to get to work on your strength or the strength of your voice. But then you can adapt the cadence according to what you need for the situation. So if you want to walk faster, you just sing a little bit quicker with a greater frequency, or the beat is higher. But like you said, you might not want to do that in the grocery store or when you're at church or something like that.
Maybe.
Especially not if you have a voice like mine. You do not want to do that. But that can be really an excellent practice mechanism.
So what do you... like how do patients or people come to you? Is it a referral from their doctor, or like if I just wanted to practice some things, like could I just call on you, and how does that work?
I think it all starts with the conversation. People might just reach out if they know about me through others. Every once in a while there'll be, we'll have referrals from physicians, certainly. But I think in a lot of cases it's just a discussion to see what are the goals and how can I help, and because we want to work toward the goals that are most important for our clients. And if it's working on something like that, then that's great. But I think what makes it most interesting is thinking about what's the real reason, what's the activity that somebody might be missing out on because freezing episode is happening and they don't want to be maybe stuck at a door out in the community or something like that. So we can go through that to make them less afraid to go participate in their daily lives. So I think that's where I like to start, is to have a conversation. What is happening functionally that is limiting this person? But most importantly, what's the why behind working on it? Because I think that makes them much more likely to go for it and, use some of these strategies because you know exactly what you want to do. And if there's something standing in your way, you're going to be that much more dedicated toward working on it.
I had a question. It was with somebody who is dealing with freezing of gait. And, I see it on their face. It's frustrating. What's one thing that you would give advice or tell them, so that, there's a ton of people out there that are like, yeah, it sucks. It's horrible. Like, what's one thing that you can guide them on?
The guidance, I think, is not to overwhelm. I don't want to be overwhelming by giving a million strategies, but we need to try many and see which ones they're most comfortable with, so that they have something at the ready when a freezing episode happens. And sometimes it's a simple thing for somebody. Maybe it's just take a deep breath, relax your facial muscles first, something like that. That could free somebody up. Whereas the next person, it might mean, okay, maybe I'm just going to take one step back with my right foot and then proceed forward.
I've gotten things like where I can't run in place anymore, and it's really weird. But now if I can do ladders where my arms are going up and that I'm not focused on my legs moving, I'm fine. Lately I've been like doing butt kicks. I can do those just fine, and so it's really weird. But I can't do like sprint in place and run in place anymore. It's probably in the past 6 months it's gotten to that point where I'm like.
But at least you're finding other things.
Yeah. But I have to find something else. Like I'm fine once I start doing ladders or butt kicks or whatever. I'm fine to run in place. But for me, just to say, pick up your feet and start running in place, it doesn't do it. But it's finding that other way of kind of getting it started.
Well, this was great, Joel. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing the information about freezing of gait and all the ideas that we can bring back to others, and hopefully it helps those who have the issue of freezing of gait. So,
I hope so. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you very much. In our last 30 seconds, I'd like to leave you with this. If you suffer from freezing or slowness of movement, or know someone who does, remember to slow down, cue yourself, then make your move. A big move if you can. There's no rush. Rushing is what makes us fall, so slow down. Take your time, listen to some music and sing along, and if you can, and dance like no one is watching. Live your life to the fullest. Thanks so much for tuning in.